Hi there, traders. This is Brad Gilbert with the FX Market Insight for Wednesday, the 2nd of December. All right, now let's just rip into this. What we're seeing in the markets, it's a pretty common thing the last few weeks in particular, seesawing risk on, risk off sentiment, right? We see the equity markets up one day or for 1 or 2 days in a row, then they go the opposite way, and it's just the news being turned upside down. But what we're seeing right now is about 3 or 4 different geopolitical events connecting all the same way, and it's creating a very risk-on sentiment, which is generally causes the US dollar to fall. So just having a look here before I get into the charts and the news, if you have a look across the market here now, the long-term trend, right? We're always looking for the markets to go with the long-term trend. Okay, short-term momentum, when it lines up with the long-term trend, you're going to get a bigger move, and it's easy to get into, right? Because you're not fighting this sort of the move against the overall trend. What we're seeing at the moment is the dollar pairs, okay, except for dollar yen, it's in no man's land, are all going down, and the dollar block all going up. Now there's varying levels here of what they're doing, so you can check the status there, but we are starting to see some basic trending markets. When we say trending, short-term and long-term trends lining up, and that's when you usually start making some cash. But it's been a little bit tricky because the last 3 or 4 days, going back to last week as well, we were seeing especially a massive spike in corona virus or cases in the US, leading to a potential massive risk-off situation and dollar strength, right? But that's just been thrown aside. And just have a look at the news here today as it lines up. As I said, there's various things going on here, and it's important you understand what's going on. Now, the US stimulus, there's a bipartisan almost agreement here out of the political scene in the US coming together, working out a very strong stimulus package that's going to take a lot of pressure off the US economy, get global economics sort of moving again. We've got Australian economies rebounding. Now, the Aussie's not exactly flying to the top side, but it adds a little bit of credibility to a dollar rally, or Aussie dollar rally, I should say. Sterling, I mean, classic stuff here, right? We're starting to hear talk. I think the Radio Times, right? So just on the radio, they're talking about the Brexit negotiations have entered the tunnel stage, and they came out and defined what the tunnel stage is. A very secretive final negotiation phase. So that's going to help sterling. Now, sterling hasn't gone up a lot like euro has, okay, and fallen like dollar Swiss, but it's another thing to think of. There's a little bit less story here around the Canadian dollar. OPEC, right? They've come out and said basically they will restrict supply further if all the members agree. Now, I don't know if that agreement's come through yet, but we are starting to see oil fall, and I think this could be a potential opportunity in dollar CAD, a little false break to the downside coming up. You've got Trump still pushing away here with fraud, okay, US vote fraud. Barr is coming out and saying that that's not, you can't see any. Now, it doesn't mean there's not any, but at the moment, Trump is sort of just getting pushed to the side. So we've got, and then the other strange thing here, right? There's talk about the COVID and funding, the stimulus package to get the funding going. But funnily enough, on this whole news network, there's not any sort of case here about massive blowouts in COVID cases in the US, right? Which is sort of what is happening. So this risk on, risk off profile, what I'm trying to say is don't fall in love with the positions in the market at the moment, because this seesawing situation with the risk on, risk off, it's every other day, right? So we could start to see some of these things just pull back, within a day. So if you see an opportunity, you get into it, go with the trend, but don't just leave big open positions up, because it could come back very quickly. Now, the overall trends, right, in the Aussie, and I've shrunk a few of these charts up to give you a bit more of a look. Aussie, Kiwi, sterling, and euro, the overall long-term trend, you can see it's up, right? When the short-term momentum goes with it, that's the easiest trade. But you know what? Looking at, the Aussie, let me just clear that. Looking at the Aussie up here, Kiwi as well, and even euro for that matter, there's no real easy entry levels, maybe above 120, the figure in euro, and we've got a little bit of a resistance line here. That's sterling's broken, but it hasn't been an easy one, right? And as I said, these can change very quickly. If you're trading dollar yen, well, you might want to change to something else, because it is just trading sideways, and dollar CAD cruising to the downside. But you know what? We saw a bit of a high here around close to 46 bucks a barrel in oil. And after the OPEC, little chat there, it's drifted off. So anyway, this is where I'm starting to come back. And if I bring you back to the daily market insight, right, we have a look down here. I'm sort of looking at dollar CAD. Now, when you see all these markets kicking into gear, right, if you're not already in the position or on the trend, you've missed it. Now, the only thing you can prepare for is a reversal of that trend, right? That's the smart thing to do, which is breaks or false breaks back down into the range, etc. So I'm looking here just at dollar CAD. I'm starting to think, well, if OPEC's come out and said what they've said and oil's fallen a bit, it's probably almost done. There's maybe enough momentum in the market to push dollar CAD down, okay, down through 129.20, right? And that should see some stop losses triggered, and then it ricochet back above 129.20, back towards 130.10 resistance, right? So we need a few things to fit into play there, but the setup looks good for a false break to the downside. We're just going to wait and see how that plays out. And as I said, that's primarily because if you've already missed the trend, well, you've got to start looking at the other side of the market. Now, what do I think overall about these moves and the trends? Well, right now, if the news doesn't change, it's going to continue, right? We could see a real decent belting to the downside of all the dollar pairs and the dollar block, okay, euro, sterling, Aussie, Kiwi. We could see these things continue to the top side very easily, right, if the news doesn't change. But this is the fact, right? The fact is the news is changing every second day, right? So do I think, can I put my hand on my heart and say, yeah, this is 100% right? No, I can't, because I don't trust the geopolitical backdrop that we've got is extremely dynamic. This stimulus package, which is out, everyone's talking about a real good package coming out, that could fall over in a day. What isn't on these news pages, as I said, the massive, huge increase in COVID cases in the US, that may blow out everything. There's, we've also obviously got the COVID vaccines. Maybe that takes out the fact that the spread of COVID in the US is expanding so much. I don't know, but keep an eye on sterling, right? If they get some sort of deal with the EU, that's a very positive thing for sterling. The US stimulus hopes, well, that's going to keep the risk on, risk off profile seesawing, I think, at this stage. And we're just got to keep an eye on things. Most importantly, the moves are emanating from the North American session, right? So make sure you're focusing on that. If you're just getting positions set up in the Asian session or early European sessions, well, the real core move is coming from the North American session. So make sure you do take the time to have a look. If you can't see what's going on in the North American session, well, then maybe just decrease your trade size, because there's a bit more high risk because you don't know what's going on, or try and get up and have a look at what's going on there as well. I added a special notation here to the daily market insight. You've always got to remember the trend is your friend. That's why the long-term trend is up here. If you can get into trades with the trends, okay, and you're looking for your closest levels here, they're the trades to be on at this point. The geopolitical news, it's rebounding all over the place, but right now it looks pretty good. All right, guys, have a good one. Cheerio.